Hey guys, welcome back to Making a Brewery episode number 19. You're very welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be sharing some news with you which I really didn't want to have to share. A bit of disappointing news. A day that I was hoping would never come. But unfortunately today is the day that I'm going to have to dump a tank of beer. Very difficult decision to make. So I spoke about on the last video the challenges I was having with the pale ale that I had brewed, insofar as the element had kicked out in the brown moisture whilst I was brewing it. It had over attenuated, so it had finished at 1.006 as opposed to 1.009, and all of that aside, I had it in the tank. It was cold crashing. It was still going to turn out to be a reasonably good beer. However, it's been in the tank now, it's been in like 3 weeks since brew day, and since it's been cold crashing like well over 10 or 11 days. And unfortunately, it's not dropping clear. So it's cold crashing more than that time. I think so unfortunately, I'm not sure if this translates on the camera and whether you can see it or not. Hopefully you can, if it focuses in or not. But it's hazy, and it's not dropping clear. And unfortunately, I'm also having the same issue with my lager, although I'm gonna give that a few more days. But again, I'm not sure if you can see it or not. But there's a persistent haze in there. So what I've done, give me a moment, as part of the Rockstar Brewer Academy, which you've probably heard me talk about before, there is a troubleshooting guide in terms of understanding which type of haze you have in your beer. So I ran a couple of tests last night, which I can walk you through, just to give you some ideas if this happens to you in the future. So determining the type of haze you have in your beer. So you could have either yeast haze, protein haze, starch haze, or chill haze. And it's important to know which one of those you have so you can rectify it going forward. So if you have yeast haze, the way to determine that is to put your sample under a microscope. Now, unfortunately, I don't have a microscope, so I couldn't do that test. But the other tests I could do. So to check whether I had protein haze, I added a few drops of caustic to each of the two samples. Not these today, I did this last night, and left them for 20 minutes. And essentially what should happen, because you're raising the pH of the beer by dropping a few drops of caustic in there, if it is a protein issue, your beer should drop clear. And the pale ale did drop clear after about 20 minutes or so. Interestingly, the lager did not. So I know that the issue that I have with my pale ale is a protein issue, and essentially some of the causes of that was insufficient kettle findings. And that rang a bell because I was quite unsure in terms of the amount of Protofloc tablets that I should use. And I figured out now that basically I was massively underdosing the Protofloc in that batch. So that's one of the potential causes. Others were the carryover of trub or hop break into the fermentation vessel. To be honest, I can't remember whether that was an issue. So it could be, but I can't remember. And another issue could be the mash or the wort pH was too high or too low. According to my records, the mash pH was spot on. So yeah, to rectify this issue going forward, I need to sort out my dosing rates on my Protofloc tablets. And yeah, essentially I won't get a hazy beer. So some of you may be sitting there and saying, are you crazy? Why are you dumping a full batch of beer just because there's a little bit of haze in there, particularly in the pale ale? Well, effectively, it's not true to brand. This beer should be a clear, crystal clear pale ale, and having haze in there just doesn't align with the style of beer that I want to put out there. This would potentially be the first batch of pale ale, apart from some pilot brews that I've done, and sold to shops as well as part of those pilot brews. But in terms of a larger scale release, I'm just not willing to put out a beer that should be crystal clear and put it out there as hazy. I've had some people say to me, well, why don't you just kind of release it as a different beer? Effectively, I would have to go design labels for a new beer, which we don't have in our core range. You know, I'm going to have to waste the time and energy on packing it and all of those things. So I've agonized over this decision about whether I should dump it or not, or whether I should keep it for myself, or what I should do with it. But ultimately, the tank that it's in is bottlenecking the rest of the brewery, because that tank is the only tank that I have with a carbonation stone. So because that beer is sitting in that tank and it's not dropping clear, all of the other beers I have waiting to be carbonated, like a red ale and potentially a stout in a couple of days, are kind of backlogged there. So yeah, the best option is get rid of it, chalk it down to a learning experience, and move the red ale over into that tank once I've cleaned it and sanitized it, etc. And then carbonate up the red ale and get that packaged, and at least that can go out to market then. But yeah, really, really disappointing news. I'm leaving the lager for a couple more days to just see, does it drop clear? I don't think it is going to drop clear because, as I said, I read in the same test, the protein test with the caustic on there, it didn't drop clear. I ran another test to see how they got a starch haze. You test that by dropping a couple of drops of, I think you put 10 mils of the beer onto a white plate, and then drop a few drops of iodine on there. And if the iodine turns black, you have a starch haze issue. That didn't happen with this one. And then also, I also checked if I had a chill haze issue. So I put these samples in at room temperature in the office and warmed the office up, and it didn't drop clear in there either. So it leads me to assume that this one could be a yeast haze issue, and it just needs a little bit more time to clear up. So I'm going to give that a few more days. It's not holding up anything else in the brewery, because that tank is kind of designated as a lager tank anyway. So I'll give it a few more days, see does it drop clear. It's been like cold crash now for, let me check on my notes here. It's been cold crashed since the 13th of April. So what's that, like? It's about 17, 18 days, something like that. So it should really be clear by now, to be quite honest, because I also used some Murphy & Son Super F in there, which should really drop it clear within a couple of days. But again, in that beer, I don't think I used enough Protafloc tablets. So yeah, multiple issues here. But look, both of these are a learning experience. It's not nice to have to dump beer, but it's also not nice to put beer that's not true to brand out onto the market and people tell me it's shit and not to buy it again. So difficult decision, but the right decision. Other things I'm going to touch on today in today's video, I'll show you some video process of the dump and me being very upset of that. And I'll talk about some other developments with the brewery in terms of where other places which have took on our beer, and talk a little bit about the next brew I'm going to do. And I may have some brew day footage of that as well. I won't be brewing today, but I may have some brew day footage as part of this video as well. So come back to you in a few moments. Okay, so this is the moment of truth. And this, I'll not lie, honest to God, this is absolutely killing me doing this. But yeah, I'm about to dump approximately 200 litres of beer. And it doesn't sit well with me. So let's just release this. It may come out quite slow because there's probably a bit of trube. There's nothing coming out at the moment. Oh, here we go. Yeah, we have some flow. There you go. Unfortunately, that is the end of that beer. Hang on, let's just slow it down now. I need to release a little bit more here. I'm guessing there's a little bit of trube getting stuck at the bottom of the tank here. Oh, there we go. Oh, I don't want it to go everywhere. Oh, slow it down a little bit. So, I don't know exactly how long that's going to take, but it may take a while to dump all of that beer. So yeah, guys, really, really difficult decision. Not a decision that I want. Oh shit! What did I do? Well, it was just a. So yeah, not a decision I wanted to have to make, but needs must. What I also didn't mention there a moment ago was how I plan to change things for the lager to ensure this doesn't happen again. So obviously, yeah, I'll increase the dosage rate on the Protofloc for the lager as well. But what I've also done is just to give it an extra little boost in the water profile. I've increased the calcium by 10 parts per million. So increasing calcium helps with yeast flocculation. So as part of my overall water profile, I'm just going to bump that up a little bit. Still going to maintain the same sulfate to chloride ratio, which is 0.9, but going to up the calcium level and still maintain the same pH level of in the mash of 5.3, I think it is off the top of my head, or 5.35, I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, maintain the same numbers in terms of pH, mash pH and sulfate to chloride ratio, but up the calcium level will help with yeast flocculation. Seems like this is slowed down again. Hang on, let me just flip this around. No, it's still flowing. Look at that delicious spear. It's heartbreaking. It really is. But yeah, has to be done. The good news, I suppose, is as soon as that tank is empty and relieved of its hazy beer, I'll give it a good clean and a sanitization run or peracetic acid run, and then the red ale, which is sitting in this tank and has been ready for a few days to be carbonated, can be transferred across over to there and carbonated. And I also have a stout in this tank, which is more or less finished fermentation. I'll give it another day or two maybe. This Kegland G40 is working quite well with these two tanks so far. It's handling that one in cold crash no problem whatsoever. That one's still maintained at 21 degrees, but I might test it out a little bit later. Actually, I probably won't have time for that to see will I handle both of them in cold crash, because I'm not sure if the stout is ready to be cold crashed or not. So yeah, maybe not. But yeah, right. I'm gonna go have a cry here, and then I'll come back in a few minutes once this is all done and I can start cleaning. So the beer dump has been completed, but I just wanted to show you, I'm just about to start cleaning this tank, and I've just taken off the top and I saw something interesting inside that I thought I would share because I'd never seen it before. Let me try get some light in here from my other phone so you can see this. So, should I get that light out of the way? So essentially that's a layer of ice which had formed. That is absolutely crazy. If you can see the amount of ice inside the tank from cold crashing. I've never seen anything like that before. There's also a serious amount of trube and gunk at the bottom there, which is essentially ice as well. Now, what's interesting about that for me is I sometimes struggled to get this beer down to what I was aiming for. I was aiming for like 1 degrees or 0 degrees Celsius, and it was constantly reading, temperature sensor was constantly reading like sometimes 1 degrees, 2 degrees, 3 degrees, even up as far as 6 degrees at times, which is insane when you consider the amount of ice that we're after seeing in there. So something tells me that the temperature sensor is not very accurate on this, but more exploration will be needed to figure that out. But yeah, I just wanted to show you that really quickly because I'd never seen anything like that before, the amount of ice that had formed inside the tank there. And that's been cold crashing for, as I said, probably nearly about 2 weeks or so. Okay, I'll be back in a few minutes to show you what I'm doing in the cleaning process. So first things first is I'm just going to give this a bit of a hose down to get rid of some of the ice that's in there and the tube, and hopefully get it to dump out through the port at the bottom. So that's my first step. Yeah, that's actually, whoa, it's absolutely insane the amount of ice in there. I may actually need to leave this to defrost for a while, because I'm glassing this hose against it, but only some of the ice is breaking away. Absolutely insane. Beer slush puppy, anyone? Maybe I'll rescue something from this batch. All joking aside, I think I am going to need to install some sort of a valve on the glycol chiller pump, because I think what's happening here, it's pumping glycol so fast and it's chilling so fast, it's causing ice to form on the inside of the tank. It's a really, really strong pump, so I think I need to be able to restrict the flow and give it time to, slowly flow around the tank, but also remove some of the, essentially exchange the heat from in there. Whereas if it's pumping really, really fast, it's not a chance really to suck any of the heat out of the beer. It's more just kind of crashing it really fast. I don't know whether that makes sense what I'm saying, but it does in my head. Okay, no joke here, this is probably going to need to defrost, which is really, really weird. But yeah, what I'm going to do is, obviously, I'll probably need to give it a bit of time. I'll keep on hosing it down, and then once all that's I get all the major gunk out of there, I'm going to attach up the CIP cycle. I'll put 30 litres of water in there with some NZ brew and run that on a cycle for about 45 minutes, whatever it is. I can't remember what my standard operating procedure on that is, but yeah, I'll give it a good run with the NZ brew to make sure it gets rid of all of that gunk. And then once that's done, I'll hose it down again and give it a run with the peracetic acid to sanitize before transferring the other beer across. So yeah, let me get to work on that. It's going to take a while. It's going to be boring to film that, but yeah, I'll come back in a little while. So emptying that tank is finally finished. It took, no joke, about 2 hours to melt the iceberg that was inside that tank. Iceberg big enough to sink the fucking Titanic. But we got there in the end. I can't understand why that formed inside the tank. Obviously an issue with my glycol chiller being a bit too powerful or something like that, I don't know. But it was just really, really weird, this size of this chunk of ice inside, and it took a long time to melt it down. So I've melted down, I've given the tank a little bit of a rinse out. I've washed the valves, I took some of the valves off and washed those in the sink, put them back on again. So I'm going to now fill up the tank with 30 litres of 60 degrees Celsius water and add in about 300 grams of NZ Brew 10 and run it through the pump and the CIP ball for approximately about 30 minutes or so. Then I'll rinse it out again, empty it, rinse it out, and then give it a run with 30 litres of cold water and how much peracetic acid? One moment until I consult my standard operating procedure. 30 litres of water and 120 mils of peracetic acid for about 15 minutes and let that rotate around. So I'm just using the grain filer here to heat up my 30 litres of water, because that's logical, it's the capacity of it. Oh shit. So now I hope I've closed every tap and valve here now before I fill this up with hot water. So yeah, look, I'm not going to show the whole cleaning cycle because that would be just boring for you guys. But I'll come back in a little bit once the cycle is done, and I want to maybe walk you through transferring the red ale from the 240 litre tank into this tank and trying to do it without picking up any oxygen, which could be tough, but we'll give it a go. So I'll come back to you in a bit. All right, that's the first cleaning cycle done. Just emptying it out now. It's coming out there quite slow. So that's the 30-minute. Oh, interesting. Maybe I need to let off a little bit of head pressure there, so the liquid can come out the bottom of the tank. So yeah, that's the first cleaning cycle done. I'm about to move on to the well, a bit of a rinse and then peracetic acid for 15 minutes to sanitize. But in the meantime, I just wanted to show you guys something, and it's actually, let me stick this on the tripod so I can get closer. So, big shout out to John at Mash Monkey Brewing on YouTube, who gave me this idea. So, let me just bring that back a little bit. So, John had asked my advice around picking up some 240 litre Speedle fermenters. So I gave him some feedback on that before he went off and bought them. But one of the big drawbacks of the Speedle systems is they're not pressure rated, number one, and very difficult to dry hop in them, and you know, you're literally you're quite limited in what you can do, and even trying to attach a CIP ball to it is a big pain because it's not really set up for that, and Speedle charges something like €450 to buy one of the lids with the spray ball, so it's insane. They're really, really expensive, everything with Speedle. So John had suggested in his latest video, or in the comments of his latest video, that he might be able to use a bulkhead to attach a 1.5 inch tri-clamp to this. So I just thought I'd check it out. So that's the 1.5 inch tri-clamp bulkhead fitting, which slots into the top nicely there. And then I have a 1.5 inch, essentially a nut for that. So I'm going to just pop an O-ring on there, and then, shit. So, tighten this up. Nice and snug, which it is. And then, this is a spare 1.5 inch spray ball that I had just lying around that I'd bought previously and never got to use it. So essentially, that can be clamped on there. If I could find another 1.5 inch tri-clamp, which I can. 1 second. Oy. So, if we clamp this on like so, I'm not going to tighten this up fully, I just want to show you what this looks like. And big kudos to John for figuring this out. Come on. Right. So just tighten it a little bit so it doesn't fall off. But yeah, essentially, that's your spray ball under there. And then you just need to hook up your pump and pipe into this. Now, my pump and pipe is set up for a 34mm connection, so I'll need to buy a 1.5 inch tri-clamp to 34mm tri-clamp connection, so it'll hook up to my pump. But there you go, CIP system for the Speedle system, and I'm very proud of that. Fair play to you, John, because that's solved a big headache for me. Previously, what I was using was my spray ball for the brew tool system sitting in that hole in a lid, and I was pulling that on top of the fermenter, and it was very messy. There was spray going everywhere, and I'd have to weigh it down, and it's just not a very good system. So that's actually a really perfect system, and it's probably saved me the guts of €450 euros if I wanted to go out and buy one of those lids from Spiegel, who are absolute rip-offs, by the way. In everything that they sell is overpriced. So there you go. I'm going to get back to the cleaning, and I'll come back in a few minutes once I, or not a few minutes, maybe half an hour or an hour, once I'm ready to transfer the red ale across. Cheers. So I stupidly forgot to turn on my mic again at this point, but essentially what I was explaining is that I hooked up this hose up to the pump and then the opposite hose into the bottom of the Brew Tools fermenter. I had added CO2 pressure to the Brew Tools fermenter, which allowed me to purge each of the hoses with CO2 to give me a nice clean transfer. So overall, yeah, the transfer went fairly well. I didn't pick up any oxygen. Well, I think I didn't anyway. Okay, that's it done. It's all transferred across. I was transferring it across and I heard a little bit of a noise and I got into panic and I stopped the transfer. And then I opened up the tank and realized actually there was still a good bit left in there. So I restarted it again. I'm not sure if opening up the tank would have led to some oxygen ingress, who knows. But got the rest of it across. But one thing which was quite surprising to me, when I did open up the tank, there was a lot of slush in there as well. So I had that glycol chiller set to 1.5 degrees Celsius. And essentially that beer is really, really icy in there. And when it transferred across, the temperature here is now showing at minus 1.5 degrees. So yeah, it's pretty cold. So I need to be aware of that when I'm crash chilling, to maybe not go as low as 1.5 degrees, maybe set it to 4 degrees to get it down to, if it's set to 4, maybe it's going to get it down to maybe 2 or something like that. And likewise, potentially with this fermenter as well, I had this completely set to 0 degrees Celsius. And I got an iceberg in there as well. So it's all transferred across. Next step is tomorrow I'm going to carbonate that based on the process that I have for carbonation, and hopefully I'll get some video of this tomorrow. It should only take me about between 3 and 5 minutes to carbonate this beer. So I'll talk more about that tomorrow. So we need to carbonate it. I need to package it tomorrow as well, because I have 2 different customers looking for the red ale at the moment. The red ale seems to be really, really popular. Everybody who's tried it so far has given me great feedback on it. It's probably one of the most popular beers. Based on, you know, the few people who've tried it have come back and said that they really love the red ale. So really, really nice to hear that. But yeah, I need to get it packaged and out the door tomorrow. But I also need to brew tomorrow as well to make up for that lost batch. So it's going to be a busy day. Having to bottle all of that, carbonate it, bottle it, label it, well, label some of them tomorrow to get them out the door. For me now, I am going to have a well-deserved hors d'oeuvre Irish Stout. Lovely. So yeah, it's been an interesting day today. A long day as well, and an early start tomorrow as well. But yeah, I feel like I made a bit of progress. It was a tough decision to get rid of that out of that beer and dump it, but at least I have the red ale in here now and I can carbonate that tomorrow and do another brew, clean that tank. Shit, yeah, that's another thing I have to do tomorrow. Carbonate, bottle, label some of them, clean the tanks, and then brew for more to go into that tank. Oh, actually, I might leave brewing until until it's a bank holiday weekend, so I can do it later at the weekend. So we'll see how we're getting on tomorrow. But anyway, cheers for now, and I'll be back tomorrow. Delicious. So it's the day after the night before, and I'm about to carbonate the red ale, which has been sitting in the tank overnight at around 4 degrees Celsius. So the method here for carbonation, which should only take around something between 3 and 5 minutes, is to set the tank pressure to 22 psi. So the spunding valve is set to 22 psi, and then you set your regulator to whatever your wetting pressure is above 22 psi. So your wetting pressure is essentially when you connect your CO2 up to your carbonation stone, when the bubbles start to flow out at whatever psi that is. For me, it's around 5 psi. That's your wetting pressure. So I set the regulator to 27 psi. So there will be 27 psi going in through the carbonation stone, but the tank pressure is set to 22 psi. So it will vent and the pressure won't build up, but the CO2 bubbles will be going into solution. So as soon as I hook this up, I'm going to set a timer for 3 minutes. So here we go. Okay, so timer, 3 minutes. And then once that 3 minutes is up, we're going to test it and test the carbonation level, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. So the pressure is building inside the tank. And once it gets to 22 psi, it will start to vent. I'm just going to stop this for a second because I think I should have, let me just pause this. I think I should have put the head pressure on first. So let me just pause. Bump it up to 22 psi head pressure. So yeah, that's something I was a little bit unsure of. I probably should have put the head pressure up to 22 first before putting the 27 pressure in, so that can work against each other, the equilibrium, or Henry's law as it's called. So it's up about 15 psi at the moment. And now, nearly there. You'll see this spun now in approximately 5 or 10 seconds. There we go. Right, head pressure is at 22. So, right, ooh. Regulator is a little bit high. Whoa. That's where we should be. Around 27 psi. I'm going to bang this back on and start the clock again. Okay, resume the clock. Not really sure if you can hear that on the microphone, but there is bubbles going in there. Okay, let me come back in a minute once the 3 minutes are up, and then we'll test it. Okay, so the 3 minutes are up. I'm just going to take an initial moutometer sample before I do an official DO, or not DO, CO2 check, or pressure check in there. So let me get a little glass, bear with me one moment. We'll see how it's looking. Oh. Now I can just see visually that is well carbonated. It tastes good too. Can I get my wife to taste this, who's just off camera? Alex? Her favourite beer is the red ale, so she'll tell me if that's carbonated well. It's not enough. More? Okay. Now, I would have thought that was perfectly carbonated, but she likes this beer a little more than me. So, right, back to the drawing board. I'm going to test it, and I'll show you how I test it in a minute, and to see what the CO2 levels are. I think we're aiming for 2.4 volumes of CO2, but I'll check that first, and then I'll show you how we're measuring the CO2 in the beer. Okay, so I'm going to test the carbonation levels here. This rather crude looking device is a Hillbilly Zam and Nagel. So all of this is made from parts from Kegland, and it costs, I'm going to say not more than €150, whereas a Zam and Nagel probably costs, I don't know, thousands and thousands of euro. So I learned this method from the Rockstar Brewer Academy. If anybody wants the part list, let me know and I can send it across to them. But ultimately what I'm going to do is I've already purged the filter space down here, and it's filled with beer. As I said, my wife Alex doesn't think it's carbonated enough, but we're going to test it to see. We're aiming for, let me see, what should be Irish Red Ale, 2.4 volumes. Okay, so this device here is essentially from Kegland as well. It's just 2 corny keg outposts. So let me just put this down. Essentially what we're doing here is we're measuring temperature and pressure, and once we know what the temperature and pressure is inside that vessel, we can consult a chart which will tell us what the current pressure is, or what the volumes of CO2 dissolved in the beer is. So what I need to do is I'm going to connect this up to this. First, I'm going to just crack this valve open so it fills. And the reason this is here is there's going to be beer spilling out of this, so we don't want it to go everywhere. So when there's no foam left coming out of this, I crack the valve, so it's just beer. And I think we're good. Right, that's just beer coming out of that now. So we filled up this device. Okay, I've got a bit of a, I made a mistake there. I have a little bit of an air bubble here, so I'm just going to try to get that out because it will give us an incorrect reading. So just crack this open again. And then shut it off. And then we are good. Okay, and now I'm going to disconnect the beer coming out of there. I know I'm making quite a mess here, but you'll see what I'm trying to do. So this is now filled up, and I need to just quickly crack this valve once and then close it again to agitate the head pressure. And then I'm going to remove this tube, get that out of the way. And now what I do is essentially I'm going to shake this for about 2 or 3 minutes to agitate and warm up the beer. And ultimately where we're looking to get to is once the temperature and the pressure has stabilized, we can take a reading from both. So we can take a pressure reading there and a temperature reading here, and we will be able to identify what CO2 is in the mixture. Okay, that's just over 2 minutes. So what I got here is the PSI on this is 14 and the temperature is around 11. So by consulting a beer carbonation chart, if I have 14 psi and a temperature of, sorry, let me just put this down. 14 psi and a temperature of around 11. It means I have 2.2 volumes of CO2. So my wonderful wife Alex, who has her earphones in at the moment because she's washing or sanitizing bottles, was spot on. The carbonation was not right. So what do I do in this situation? Head pressure is still nearly 22 degrees. I'm going to connect the carbonation stone up again for about 30 seconds, and that should get us up to where we need to be. So let me just close some of the valves here so I don't get beer squirting out everywhere. So 30 seconds is what I'm looking for here. So the 30 seconds should essentially get us up that extra 0.2 vols of CO2 in there. And just to prove the point, I'm going to do it again. I'm going to test it again. Right, so that's our 30 seconds. Cool. Right, I'm going to knock off the video for a second whilst I clean or empty out that device so I can get it ready to test again. Well, I'll come back when I'm testing. Okay, so we go again. I am literally spilling beer everywhere. This place is... Right, so where are we? Yeah, we're going to tilt it this direction when we're filling up, so to avoid any air locks or air bubbles getting caught in here, because it will give us a false reading. So just going to crack this open ever so slightly and let it fill up, which you can see is happening. I'm going to tilt it, let that foam escape. And then seal it up. Make sure I have any air bubbles out there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, disconnect. And now I'm just going to open and close this really, really fast just to agitate. There we go. And then pop this off. And again, back to, oh shit, the shake method for 2 minutes, 2 to 3 minutes. Let me put a timer on that. 2 minutes. Essentially, 2 minutes is just the guideline. It's for when your temperature and your pressure stabilizes, which is normally around 2 minutes. Okay, that's the 2 minutes up, but let me see, we have, I'm not sure I trust this now because it's showing less pressure, but let's see. So we're around 12 degrees Celsius and the pressure is showing us 12. Yeah, that can't be right because it's showing us 2 volumes of CO2. Let me just give it another minute or so to stabilize. Yeah, let me just leave it sitting here for a minute to stabilize because the pressure is still going up and the temperature is still going up as well. So just let me give it a moment to stabilize and then I'll come back. All right, it's still showing at around 2.2 volumes of CO2. So the 30 seconds obviously wasn't enough. So I'm going to give it a blast of about another minute. Just make sure the pressure is right here. It is around 28 psi. And I'm going to bang this in for another minute. So, start the timer. So we gave it 3 minutes initially, then another 30 seconds. I'm gonna give it 1 more minute, and that should do it. And I'm gonna test it again, and I'm expecting it to be spot on. Actually, I know what I've done wrong there. So I had closed the valve. So the beer that was in this was essentially the still 2.2 carbonated beer. That wasn't very clever of me. So how do I make sure that that beer is the freshly carbonated beer? I might need to dump that off and then fill it back up again. Let me come back to you in a minute on that. Right, so I've essentially dumped the beer that was in here. I'm going to refill this now with freshly carbonated beer. And give that time to equalise. You can see it's kind of highly carbonated in there at the moment. Hopefully I haven't overdone it, but we'll give it a few moments and then we'll start the process again. It's all a learning process. Every day is a learning day. Once you do this a few times, start to get the hang of it, and it becomes much easier. Right, I'm gonna hook this up and start filling. Okay, 2 minutes are up. The temperature is at 12 degrees Celsius and the pressure is at 20. So 20 and 12 gives me, well, would you look at that, 2.5 volumes. We're aiming for 2.4. I'm perfectly happy with that because I know I'll potentially lose a smidgen of carbonation in the bottling. So we'll just take a glass sample here as well for the mouth-ometer. Yeah, much better. Alex? Good? There we go. We're spot on. So we're ready to bottle. Happy days. But yeah, this is a wonderful little machine. If you would like me to share it with you, just let me know and I can send you an email. Just pop me your email address. Alex wants another sup. Right, good to go. Okay, just want to initially show you the setup of the way we do the bottling. So this is just a keg with Star San at the moment. So I can just clean the lines before we actually put some beer in there. Give me some Star San. Right, so just gonna take a bottle here. So I think I showed on previous videos. We purge the bottle first of all. Just turn on the lights here so you can potentially see. Turn on some of the lights. So we purge the bottle first of all, and then we run it through. Now this is obviously just pulling through Star San at the moment, but in a minute I'll be able to hook this up onto the filter at the bottom of the tank there, and we can start to fill our bottles directly from the tank. So you can probably see that filling up. So I'm just going to let it fill right to the top and let it overflow a little bit. So kind of cleaning and purging those lines, getting sanitizer into them. All right, just let me dump this. And we'll do it on the other one too. And then, so yeah, just cleaning those lines. Essentially, they're both the one line coming off the keg, but split into two using a John Glass splitter. Um, Again, just pushing the CO through to those lines. So that's the simple setup. I'll take a little bit of footage later on as we're actually bottling, once we have all the bottles sanitized and ready to go. Cheers. All right, so that's the bottling is finished. Didn't get as much as we had hoped. Like there's 40 bottles in each of those cases, so that's 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 240, and I have another probably 60 or so. So probably around 300 bottles. It's not great in terms of a yield. I would have been hoping for around 400 bottles, but there was a little bit of loss in the tank. Again, there was a lot of slush. I don't know whether I mentioned that yesterday. There was a lot of slush in the tank, which would have took up a bit of the beer. And then obviously through transfer and the testing and everything else, there's a lot of losses there. I need to find a way to reduce those losses because that's impacting the bottom line, obviously. Every time we have less than 400 bottles per batch, it's definitely going to have an impact on us. So yeah, I need to figure that out and how to be a little bit better in terms of minimizing losses. But it's all part of a learning process. It's every day is a learning day. So next for me, I'm going to need to clean that tank and the other tank that red ale came from. And a little bit later today, I'm hopefully going to label some of these bottles. I have them in the office at the moment, kind of warming them up a little bit to get rid of the condensation. So I can potentially label them because I do have some deliveries to do. I have 2 cases of red ale to go to a pub alongside 2 cases of the stout. And I do need to drop up a case of the red ale to a different customer as well. So yeah, it's I'm not going to brew today. I think that was part of the plan that I was going to brew today, but just so much going on. Obviously, this stuff is taking up space now. It would just be a nightmare. So I'm potentially going to brew tomorrow. So yeah, I'll kind of finish this video off here. As always, if you enjoyed the content, please give it a like. Do feel free to comment on anything that you've seen in the video. If you have any questions, if you want that carbonation analyzer as well, pop me your email address and I'll get that sent on across to you. And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you for watching. Cheers. Sláinte.